Midnight News coming to you live from Algiers with me, Madame Ziane, to the headlines. Health Ministry in Gaza reported 30 Israeli massacres, resulting in 32 killed and 139 injured in 24 hours. Also coming up, UN coordinator warns of unprecedented humanitarian crisis in Gaza and urges full crossings access for aid delivery. Algerian Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf discusses drug combat strategy, organized crime and terrorism with UNODC director during Austria visit. And Iran calls for a constructive dialogue to revive nuclear talks, rejecting pressure and threats. Welcome back to the program. The Palestinian Ministry of Health in Gaza announced that the Israeli occupation committed 3 massacres against families in the Gaza Strip, killing 32 martyrs and injuring 139 others over the past 24 hours. The Ministry of Health indicated in a statement on Tuesday that the death toll of the Zionist aggression against the Gaza Strip had risen to 37,658 martyrs. Civil defense in Gaza said the Israeli occupation is now directly targeting centers and tents sheltering the displaced as well as inhabited homes. In a press conference on Tuesday, the civil defense in Gaza confirmed that during the past 48 hours, the occupation targeted 4 shelter centers and 11 homes, all inhabited, killing dozens of displaced citizens in these centers and residential homes and leaving hundreds of wounded.
Our Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip are exposed to a more ferocious and harsher stage in this ongoing Israeli aggression against them. The Israeli occupation is now targeting tents, shelters of displaced civilians, and inhabitant homes. This dangerous phase of this Israeli aggression, which the occupation calls Phase C, directly targets thousands of displaced Palestinians and citizens who have returned to their destroyed homes. It consistently puts them under the threat of death, which exacerbates the suffering of civil defense teams who do not have the equipment and rescue and firefighting equipment necessary to deal with this dangerous stage.
The Commissioner General of the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees, UNRWA, Philippe Lazzarini, confirmed that the Israeli occupation continues to target the agency's facilities in Gaza, pointing out that a bombing was recorded on Monday night on an UNRWA school, leaving martyrs and wounded. In his press conference, Lazzarini indicated that there are 4,000 missing children, with 17,000 children who lost their parents in the Gaza Strip.
Again, a school has been hit at the level of the beach camp, which is on the northern part of Gaza, and reportedly we have heard about 12 people killed, 22 would have been injured. But this brings also the total of our premises which have been hit or damaged or targeted since the beginning of the war to 190, which is more than half the premises and the infrastructure that we have in the Gaza Strip. And as you know, these premises and this shelter are also used by the population to seek what remains as a possible protection, but more than 500 people so far have been killed while seeking the UN protection.
The UN coordinator for the Middle East peace process, Tor Wensland, said that the humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip has deteriorated in an unprecedented way and that the majority of the population suffers from food insecurity, stressing the necessity of opening all crossings and ensuring the delivery of humanitarian aid to the besieged enclave. Wensland explained in a session of the UN Security Council devoted to the situation in the Middle East and the Palestinian issue that the level of humanitarian aid that was allowed to enter Gaza is very low and does not meet the needs of the desperate population.
The devastating impacts of the hostilities on the civilian population in Gaza and the unprecedented humanitarian crisis remains deeply alarming. I have witnessed myself the deterioration of the security situation on each of my visits. Ongoing military operations and a near total breakdown of civil orders have resulted in multiple reported incidents of thefts of relief supplies and shooting that pose significant risk to the population and humanitarian workers. A shooting incident on 15 June that resulted in the killing of 2 Palestinians while an aid convoy was on the road prompted the cancellation of convoys to Kerem Shalom between 16 and 18 June to mitigate risks. Effective mechanisms for humanitarian notification, safe conditions for humanitarian operations, and sufficient access to humanitarian needs remain sorely lacking and must be put in place without delay.
Algeria's permanent representative to the United Nations, Ammar Ben Jama, said that the death of Palestinians from starvation in Gaza is a reality whose the occupying power bears responsibility and must be held accountable for.
People are dying from starvation. They are dying from hunger in Gaza. This is the cruel reality. The culprit is well known, the Israeli occupying power that must be held accountable for this devastation. The objective of this barbarity is clear: a second Nakba. Yes, the occupying power aimed to destroy Gaza and displace its population.
Benjamin stressed that settlers' terrorism in the West Bank has reached unprecedented levels and that their continued provocations will lead to an escalation of the situation.
Settler terror have reached an unprecedented level, often perpetrated under the protection of the Israeli Defense Forces, who, under the international humanitarian law, have the obligation to protect the Palestinian civilians. We demand accountability for the perpetrator of this act of terror.
The Algerian ambassador to the UN added that Algeria condemns the decision of the occupation authorities to stop transferring tax revenues to the Palestinian Authority.
The Palestinian Authority should be empowered to assume its responsibilities. We condemn the occupying authority decision to suspend the transfer of clearance revenues collected on behalf of the Palestinians. These revenues belong to the Palestinians and are not a charity from the Israeli occupying power. They must be released without delay.
The Zionist occupation army reserve soldiers refused to return to the Gaza Strip, emphasizing the failure of the Rafah invasion because of its danger to their lives and the lives of the prisoners. This indicates their desperation to achieve their objectives by continuing aggression against Gaza amid increasing divisions among the entity's leaders and agencies, exacerbated by judicial decisions related to compulsory conscription of Haredim in the occupation forces. Hassan Barkan has more details.
As the Israeli occupation relies on its military strength to achieve its announced goals against the Gaza Strip, rebellion is rising within its ranks. Hebrew newspaper reports that reserve soldiers are refusing to return to the Gaza front, viewing the Rafah invasion as a threat to their lives and the lives of prisoners of war, entered without a clear strategic plan.
Dozens of Zionist soldiers have confirmed they will not return to Gaza or resume fighting, even if it means facing punishment. This highlights the dangers occupation leaders have consistently warned about, including the potential collapse of the army. These repercussions have been exposed by this war.
The ground losses are threatening the Israeli occupation government coalition, as the judicial authorities approved the conscription of Haredim into the Zionist army, calling for halting budgets for religious schools whose students evade joining the army, proven to be confused in the Gaza battles. If the situation were different, there would be no need to recruit religious people.
There's a new rope tightening around Netanyahu's neck. There is a serious rift surrounding the occupation government and a wide divide within Israeli society. This indicates a significant problem facing the occupation government and the religious parties, leading to opposition from the public. This internal strife is what Netanyahu is grappling with, especially considering the religious community in Israel, known as the Haredim, who live isolated from broader Israeli society.
Netanyahu is attempting to market an imminent victory in Rafah, south of Gaza. However, the reserve soldiers, having faced the intense resistance from Palestinians, have coupled their retreat with despair. Netanyahu finds himself caught between his political ambitions to prolong the war and setbacks on the ground, deepening the rift among the entity's politicians.
The Quds Brigade, the military wing of the Islamic Jihad movement, released footage of joint mortar shell bombardment with the Al-Aqsa Martyrs brigades and the Al-Nasr Salah ad-Din brigades targeting the Kisufi military sites. Let's take a look.
الله أكبر الله أكبر.
The Algerian Prime Minister Nadir Al-Arbawi received a phone call on Tuesday from the Palestinian Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mohammed Mustafa. Through the call, he conveyed the greetings of the President of the State of Palestine, Mahmoud Abbas, and his deep appreciation to the Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune for all his tireless efforts in mobilizing international support for the Palestinian cause in various international forums, especially in the United Nations Security Council. Moving on to different developments now. Entrusted by President Abdelmajid Tebboune, Algerian Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf arrived in the Austrian capital Vienna on Tuesday for a two-dimensional official visit. This visits program includes two main dimensions: the multilateral dimension, which pertains to Algeria's relations with various international organizations headquartered in Vienna, and the bilateral dimension, which concerns the economic partnership relations and political dialogue between Algeria and Austria. At the beginning of his working visit to Austria, Algerian Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf held bilateral talks with the acting executive director of the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, Denis Tacha Ishawalit, in the presence of all the heads of departments of this UN agency. The talks focused on cooperation in areas related to combating drugs, organized crime, and the scourge of terrorism, as well as issues related to the recovery of stolen funds. In this regard, Minister Attaf emphasized the importance of intensifying efforts to confront the challenges associated with drugs and their links to organized crime and the financing of terrorism. He pointed out Algeria's tireless efforts in dealing with the phenomenon of targeted flooding with highly potent cannabis, which remains the most widespread drug in Africa according to successive global reports on drugs issued by the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. Algerian Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf met with Rafael Mariano Grossi, the Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency. Ahmed Attaf reaffirmed Algeria's support for the IAEA and discussed enhancing cooperation in the peaceful uses of nuclear energy, especially following a national framework agreement signed in November 2023. They also focused on developing nuclear applications in health, cancer treatment, radiotherapy, and nuclear medicine, as directed by President Abdelmajid Tebboune. The head of Algerian diplomacy also held talks with Robert Floyd, the Executive Secretary of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty Organization. Mr. Attaf reiterated Algeria's commitment to disarmament and nuclear non-proliferation, emphasizing its adherence to international law and the lingering effects of French nuclear tests. He pledged Algeria's continued support for the CTBTO and its efforts to expedite the entry into force of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. Algeria's International Fair is seen by many economic operators as a platform that offers many opportunities to establish partnerships and attract foreign investments in various fields, as emphasized by the country's political leadership, which granted a series of incentives and facilitations included in the new investment law. Mohamed Khatil.
Algeria has been witnessing over the few last years a growing dynamic in its trade relations and bilateral and multilateral investment networks with many countries around the world. The development of these relations and partnerships is guaranteed by the necessary incentives granted for foreign and local investment alike, in accordance with a political will that aims to diversify the national economy based on Algeria's potentialities as well as the various opportunities offered by the Algerian market in many fields.
The dynamic between Algeria and Italy is very strong, in addition to the solid friendship relations that link the two countries. We must say that economic relations are very important for us, especially with regard to gas. In parallel, there are Italian companies that produce equipment used in the field of gas, in the field of food processing industry, the plastic and steel industry, as well as car manufacturers. Our relations continue in a dynamic way, and this is extremely important because Algeria is a fundamental country for Italy.
The 55th edition of the Algiers International Fair is indeed an opportunity to seal new bilateral Algerian foreign partnerships or strengthen old ones based on a win-win principle.
Every year, Turkey and Algerian relationships getting better, and our exports, of course, it's very good now. We have laser machines, plasma, and other press brake machines all over Algerian market. And we are working more than 20 years SST equipment company here. We are very strong on it, and we have service here. We are happy to be here in Algeria, and I hope it will be better in the future, Turkey and Algerian relationships.
With relentless efforts, Algeria seeks to conclude more economic partnerships with several countries around the world and seeks to diversify them in many sectors thanks to its geographical, environmental, energy and human capabilities, in addition to the qualitative facilitations and incentives granted to foreign and local investors.
Algerian Minister of Trade and Export Promotion Tayyip Zitouni emphasized Algeria's commitment to continental integration, a top priority for the country. Over the years, Algeria has actively defended common African positions and interests. In a speech delivered by the director of the Algerian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Hussein Zawi, at a forum on investment in Algeria, Zitouni highlighted Algeria as a major investment destination. He stated that investment is key to successful intra-regional trade within the African Free Trade Area, which will provide a common framework for the continent over the next 50 years.
What our country offers in this field, especially in terms of its capabilities, is significant. Algeria serves as a gateway to the African market, striving to play its full role as an economic power in a way that benefits the African continent. This integration enables not only Algeria, but also African countries to join global value chains, which is very important.
To Russia now, where President Vladimir Putin criticized Western politicians for failing to thoroughly examine Moscow's peace initiative, designed to resolve the Ukrainian crisis and bring an end to the conflict, as he conveyed in his address to attendees of the annual Primakov Reading Forum, read by his International Affairs Assistant Yuri Ushakov. Putin also expressed optimism that participants in the forum would actively consider and respond to the initiative. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President's advisor, Mikhailo Podolyak, stated that Ukraine clearly understands that any plan to end the war with Russia must be based on international law, and that peace must be fair, as he described it. In his statement to Reuters, the Ukrainian President's advisor emphasized that the war cannot end without holding Russia accountable.
To freeze the war at the current front lines, where the active fighting is taking place, would be strange, as it is Russia that is on the territory of Ukraine. It is Russia that has violated international law, and freezing the war at the current front lines will not stop the war as such. It will prolong it. I would like to reiterate that Ukraine has an absolute clear understanding, and it is spelled out in the peace formula proposed by President Volodymyr Zelensky. It is clearly stated there, peace can only be fair, and peace can only be based on international law.
Iran insists that the only practical option to revive the nuclear agreement is through constructive and honest dialogue and cooperation. Iran's ambassador and representative to the UN emphasized at a Security Council meeting that pressure, intimidation, threats, and confrontation lead to a dead end.
We also note the Secretary General's recent report, which accurately states that the United States has neither returned to the JCPOA nor lifted the unilateral sanctions reimposed after the illegal withdrawal on 8 May 2018 and urged participants, especially the United States, to pursue dialogue and cooperation. However, the report continues to overlook the root causes of the current situation, the unilateral and unlawful U.S. withdrawal from the JCPOA and subsequent failure of the E3EU to honor their commitment under the deal. We sincerely appreciate most Council members for reaffirming their resolute support for the restoration of JCPOA and calling for its full implementation by all sides as the only viable course of action.
In the same context, Algeria renewed its support for the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action concerning the Iranian nuclear file. Nader Al-Wafi, advisor at the Permanent Mission of Algeria to the United Nations and coordinator of the Sanctions Committee in the Security Council stated at a Security Council meeting that the JCPOA remains the best option for Iran to renew its nuclear obligations in exchange for lifting all imposed sanctions. He called on all parties to engage constructively, show flexibility, and work towards a swift return. To implementing the agreement.
Algeria strongly supports the comprehensive joint action plans, considering them a significant multilateral diplomatic achievement and an important contribution to regional peace and security. We believe these plans remain the best option for ensuring Iran's commitment to the nuclear file in exchange for lifting all sanctions. We stress the importance of resuming diplomatic talks to revive these plans, urging all parties to engage constructively, show flexibility, and work toward rapid implementation to achieve peace.
That's a wrap for tonight's program. Thank you for watching and see you tomorrow.